Well, we put it off long enough. We're going to talk about some wrestling. And we said last week on the program that NXT had been such a disappointment in most ways that I said Balor and O'Reilly were going to interact. I thought they were going to have the rubber match, but instead they're going to be partners. I said, I'll see what they do, and we will see if anything else is worthy of comment. And the answer to that one is negative. But I just want to briefly thumb through and explain to the people who may not have watched this program how rotten it was, and how that for whatever reason, Brian, do you heard about the ratings right this week?
I did.
This was the best, probably the best AEW television program I've ever seen them do. And this was probably the worst NXT program I've ever not even wanted to watch most of. And they were only 20,000 viewers apart. AEW was down, NXT was up. There's no justice in the world. But this is what NXT gave us, expecting people to watch this. The opening match was another Dusty Classic Tag Team Tournament match. Drake Maverick and Killian Dane against MSK. As we mentioned, the whole deal with Dane and Maverick, the reluctant partners, has been ridiculous and hokey and phony. And I've met Drake Maverick, and he's a fine young man, but I have to be fair and I have to be consistent. Visually, it's ridiculous. And the jacked up member of MSK, I've watched this for a second, wrestled evenly with Drake Maverick, who's 70 pounds lighter, it looks like. And then the MSK with bad hair and prison tattoos did a backslap tag and started doing gymnastics. And I just zoned out. Killian Dane has got a rough and tumble, burly heel or gimmick babyface look. If he hadn't been made out to be a bumblefuck with a partner that he doesn't want and shouldn't have, they might have been able to do something with him. Did you see Mercedes or Mackenzie or whatever her name is, the blonde lady in the back with Kurt Stallion, the fucking nondescript guy that hit the ring last week in street clothes is Kurt Stallion, and he sat there and delivered a promo about tumbleweeds and shooting stars that was the most scripted nonsense that I've ever heard, in a delivery that made it sound like he was at the time under hypnosis. Did you even watch any of this, by the way?
I guess you couldn't tell by the good mood that I'm in today.
Okay, well,
I did not bother with NXT. I DVR'd it just in case. You said, Brian, you have to see this.
But you don't need to see this. But if I'm lying, I'm flying, and my feet ain't left the ground. I don't know what the fuck. Tumbleweeds and shooting stars. Then they have to have a women's tag team tournament, Dusty Classic. So it was Aaliyah and Jessie Camilla, and Robert Stone is back against Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. That was the second match of the evening. The third match of the evening was Tyler Rust with his new manager, Malcolm Bivens, against I don't know who the fuck. And the reason I don't know who the fuck is because they joined this. They were already in the ring. The bell rang, and they locked up as soon as they came up on the air, and then they went to a promo with Malcolm Bivens in the box over the start of the match. And why would I care? You know, like, this was fucking, and so boom. Then another Dusty Classic tag team match. The Grizzly Droopy Veterans against Kushida and Leon Ruffin. Almost an hour into the program at that point, I'm fast forwarding the show and watching the commercials, right? It's not a who's who of tag team wrestling. It's a who's that of tag team wrestling. And then this match was over, and so they cut to the back, and Brian, guess what was happening back in the back locker room area?
A backstage brawl.
No, it wasn't happening. It had already happened. Somebody else had been beaten up. I've said this, I've called for this. We should have congressional hearings, more security, because the most dangerous place on earth is a wrestling locker room. 4 or 5 times per night, somebody's getting beat up back there, right? So at this point, I'm just like, fucking hell, is anybody going to try here? Tony Storm comes to the ring and does an in-ring promo. And Toni Storm, as we've mentioned, looks like a star and does a decent promo, but we're an hour and 15 minutes into this show. And here comes Io Shirai, who can barely speak English. And I'm now watching two girls argue, one that can barely speak English on a fucking wrestling program. And suddenly they tackle each other, and start having a fight, and they're just alone in the ring. Nobody's ringing a bell. Nobody's running out. Nobody's trying to stop it. Referee, security, other people. Then here comes Mercedes Martinez. And these three girls go back and forth, flattening one of them, and then the other two will fight, and then one gets taken out, whatever the fuck. No bell, no referees, no security. They just fight back and forth for no reason until I think they were finished. And then Swerve Scott took on Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed lost Godzilla, his sidekick, this week. Maybe they realized he didn't have a fucking stuffed Godzilla on his shoulder this week, but I look at this guy. He could have been in any territory, in any era of the business. You could have taken this guy, maybe shaved his hair a little bit because he's got a little just kind of floppy young haircut, but you could have made him a monster heel, given him a hot manager, and made him a main event attraction instantly in 4 weeks' time in any territory in the world. And in this match, I don't even know who the fucking babyface was supposed to be because it probably was Bronson Reed, but Swerve Scott just wrestles. He doesn't actually work like a heel. Swerve is a mid-card guy absorbing all of Bronson Reed's shit and kept fighting back. And then finally, Reed beat him with the splash, but it was too competitive because with Bronson Reed, if you're not going to use him as a monster with a goal in mind and you're going to fucking make him a top guy, don't fucking use him. If he needs to get practice, then put him on fucking fair shows in Florida because he's too special to just be out there having matches and setting people's opinion of him as this guy who has good matches with middle card fucking guys. They can't make attractions anymore. Guess who's going to team next week on NXT, Brian, that we actually are going to have to dip into this one? Guess who's going to be partners?
Who haven't already been partners?
Yes.
Damian Priest and Mickey Mouse.
Well, we should be so lucky to get Priest. Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher.
Oh, they're friends now.
Yes, because they sat down next to each other. Ciampa was in front of his garage door with the purple lighting that he usually sits at, and Thatcher pulled up a chair, and now apparently they're soulmates because of their mutual respect, and next week they're going to wrestle Adam Cole and Roderick Strong.
Oh, okay, that I do want to see.
Well, yes, it's going to be a great match, but it's just so fucking stupid. They just had a fight pit and got respect for each. I don't fucking. And who's the goddamn heels? Cole and Roddy have just, the era has become baby faces, and Ciampa and Thatcher is Ciampa now a fucking heel because he's got respect for Thatcher, who was a heel? I don't fucking know. And finally, the last match was on this program. I'm not kidding. This is everything else that I've just read off. That's what they gave you. O'Reilly and Balor against Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. And I can say real briefly about this match. As a pro wrestler, Balor is a better all-around in-ring worker than anybody on either show except Dax, and O'Reilly ain't far behind. But on these shows, he's the guy. And Lorcan and Burch they're great mechanics, but they have no personality, no color, and nobody's trying real hard to give them any. From the black boots and the black tights to the bald heads to the same faces to the whatever. A manager could be color or a gimmick without making them goddamn, talking parrots or whatever. But nevertheless, here was another problem I've heard, because the announcers beat to death the idea of can O'Reilly and Balor coexist and trust each other but they did not beat to death. And I was trying to listen to find out why that they were in this match to begin with, why that it was a thing that they needed to do to team up. And that's the thing they never explained. And so you've got the two guys that have been fighting, have broken each other's jaws against the team that Birch and Lorcan don't really heel. They just wrestle rough and make mean faces. But I realized when I was watching this match, I know there's no fans out there, and I know everybody's smart anyway. But if there was people in a building watching these matches, almost nothing about what modern heels do to the baby faces would get enough heat that it would make the fans want to help them these days. It just looks like they're just kicking the baby face's ass. So that was the reason why that I mentioned this whole TV show to begin with, is because this match made me realize when I was trying to look for something constructive. Think about it. Heels don't heel. Heels do. They might cheat and pull hair, but the kind of jeopardy that the heels used to put the baby faces in, whether they were bleeding or whether they were hurt or whether the heel was believable enough trying to pull their eye out or really fucking them around or going to hurt somebody, the shit that they would do that would make people in the audience want to hit the ring and help the baby face fight back is not even being done. So even nobody works like a despicable fucking heel that needs his ass kicked. So even if people believed it anymore, which they don't, there's no instigation. There's no trying to arouse people with some type of, give them some sense that there's unfairness going on, that somebody's being cheated or jacked around or screwed out of something. But I mean, and Balor and O'Reilly were good as a team. Balor did a great job of fighting for the hot tag. Kyle did a big fucking comeback. And he caught Birch, I guess it was, with a fucking submission and tapped him out, which was so refreshing. I've talked so many times about when you have a tag team match, get the heat, give your partner the fucking big hot tag, blow a big comeback, and go into the finish. Not incessant tags in and out, back and forth on one or both sides that then brings the thing down before you do your finish. And then, of course, Pete Dunne fucking hit the ring, and the heels got heat on Balor because Kyle was down. But this was either a dramatic foreshadowing or a bad camera shot. They shot Kyle O'Reilly real briefly, and he's looking up and watching them, just obviously clear-eyed, watching them kick the shit out of Balor, like waiting for his cue. I don't know whether that was a fucking mistake or whether it was they're going to harken back to that later if something happens between them. But anyway, they had here comes Cole and Roddy, and the heels powdered to the stage, and they had a wild, chaotic stare down to end the program. Except for that match, it was hot fucking dog food. And that was one of their better ratings, which I'm telling you, a lot of times the rating is you get the rating you deserve from the show you had the previous week. But I didn't think last week was that good either, though. So I don't know what the fuck.
But the other thing is, and probably have to say this every now and then, the ratings for all of these shows, for every show on TV, is bullshit. It isn't an exact rating. There aren't.
Well, obviously.
No one's tuned into the cable boxes, which you'd think that's what they would do to tell us who's watching what. We don't know if NXT is 2 million people a week. We don't know if it's 500,000 people a week. We assume that this mechanism that they use to get the rating is correct, but we really don't know that.
Well, okay, Debbie Downer. Just shit all over the whole thing. Actually, I know. I told the guy at our local TV station here one time in Louisville that he'd exposed his business. I've told you this story, but the television station's broadcasting tower for an over-the-air signal was on the air, but something screwed up in their signal to the cable company, which everybody watches at that time. Like 5% of the people are watching over the air. The signal to the cable company, the first 15 minutes of our program, was color bars. And we got the ratings. That was the highest rated 15 minutes. I called the guy and said, bullshit, I caught you. You know about my business, now I know about yours. But the thing is, though, it would seem that whether it's off or on or how far away it is, it would be somewhat consistent with programs from week to week, you would think, within their range, because they're measuring it the same way every week. That's what I'm going for. So I don't know.
When do they change it up? When do they... I know you would know this. When do they have like new Nielsen families or new Nielsen homes? How often do they change it up?
I used to know that, but I don't anymore, because it used to be that sweeps months were what they call them, where they do the ratings sweeps. And it was February. November and February were the two most important. And then I believe May was one of those months. But February and November were the important sweeps months. And that's where that they would set their advertising revenue for their seasons based on the ratings information they got. That's why every network program back then, if somebody on Friends was going to get married, they'd get married in a sweeps month, or a big wedding or a big death or a big long-awaited or a guest appearance or whatever would come in the sweeps months.
If you're a wrestling fan, that's why all of a sudden superstars of wrestling had main event matches for a few weeks instead of just job matches.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, go back to November 1989 in WCW, the November to Remember, which was named by Bob Caudle, but was my idea, because as soon as they put me on the booking committee, Flair did, and they started talking about the sweeps months, I said, why don't we have a main event match on each one of the WCW programs, Friday Night Power Hour, Saturday Night TBS, Sunday Night Main Event, and the two syndicated shows every week of the month of November. The ratings will come up and we'll all look good. So, well, how are we going to, because back then, sometimes you would not have a main event, like competitive match on a television program. It'd be all job matches, or mostly, right? And I remember taking it to one of the trips we had over a weekend. I took the talent roster and the calendar, and the next week at the booking meeting, I came back in with a main event match that we could give away on free TV without being insane, for every television program on that month of all of the programs. So that's what we did. And Bob Caudle, in the production meeting, the first week of that, when we announced that, that's what we're going to do, we should call it November to Remember. I said, well, let's do that. And that's what we did. Anyway, I ain't going to remember much about that episode of NXT, I'll tell you that.